Mm. Okay. One other thing before we start, how do I like pronounce your last name?
Ooh,
Is it
maybe we should
Guttuso
ask
or
the
Focus?
crowd. Yes, you got very close. It's Italian. I am not
Oh,
Italian, but I married my husband's grandparents came over to the United States from Sicily
mhm.
to New Orleans.
Oh,
So it's Gattuso, but I didn't realize how Italian it was until I went to Italy,
mhm.
and we got separated from a part of our group at a train station, and we asked the train announce, like the people in the little office, to announce where we were, and they were like, "With Salvador Gattuso, please come to," and I was like, "Oh, that's how you say it." So I'm Ashley Gattuso. Yeah.
Okay, nice, nice. Okay. Okay, so let's start right now. Just hello everyone. Thank you for joining us today on this webinar with Ashley Guttuso from Simple Focus Software, the Simple Focus Software, right?
Yes.
And yeah, she's like the director of marketing from Simple Focus Software. And today we'll be talking about like email marketing, uh, how to win the inbox. I'm sure like most of the people, they don't like really like newsletters, but I believe that newsletters, like they're a good and valuable channel. And I'm hoping to learn from one of the people who knows how to do newsletters very well. So before we start, I'll start by like, I just want to launch like a poll and see, so that we see how many people we have. I'm sure many people will join, so that we see like where people are from, what they do, or that kind of stuff. So I'm going to launch the first poll. Can you see it in
I
about 10
can.
seconds? Yeah, I'll stop it in about 10 seconds.
I can't vote though.
Oh, you
That's
can.
a panelist no. We
Yeah,
can't skew the results.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Mhm. Okay. Yep. People are still voting. Seems like most of the people, they work for an agency.
Okay.
50% that's an agency, then 33 that's in-house other, and then in-house SaaS, that's 17%. Yep.
Excellent. So the office I'm in right now is an agency office, actually, because our SaaS portfolio is
Mhm.
the child of that agency, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because on occasion, my CEO would find a micro SaaS tool that he really liked, and then with agency profits, acquire it and start that under the portfolio business.
Nice,
Yep.
nice. Okay, I think we are ready to start. Ashley, the floor is yours. Yeah,
Thank you. All right.
sure.
So first of all, thank y'all for having me today. I don't know where everyone is from, and I always feel bad when I can't understand an accent and ask clarifying questions. It may be the same with you, because I have a thick-ish, I don't know if it's super thick, but I'm definitely a Southerner. I was born and raised in Mississippi, and I live in Mississippi again. I'm in Memphis today because that's where our offices are, and I am having some team meetings. And it's been a long time since I've had in-person team meetings, so I'm really excited about that. But just a snapshot of my background, so you understand where I'm coming from. Born and raised in Mississippi, but then went to graduate school for journalism in New York City at NYU. So really heavy into magazine journalism at the time, at the very cusp of self-publishing, right? So 2004, 2005, our professors were going, hey, there's this new thing called blogs, and we should all be starting to understand how to write our own blogs. It was the age of a few email newsletters getting some traction, like Daily Candy and other news publication newsletters that were coming out. But brands weren't really participating in this at that point. So then I went to Richmond, Virginia, and then Vero Beach, Florida. And now I'm full circle back in Mississippi to be closer by our families. But throughout that entire journey, and basically since childhood, because I even in my high school edited my school newspaper, and in my college was the editor-in-chief of our 8-page once a week college newspaper. I have always been obsessed with telling the stories of real people in interesting ways, of applying some of the methodology behind creative writing to real life stories. So we call that narrative nonfiction, and that was the place I lived in. So as the world changed and content marketing became a viable career choice, which at the time I was choosing graduate school, it was like, oh, I guess I'll go to journalism school and be a journalist. It was a very easy evolution for me. And throughout probably every role in my career, I have somehow been in charge of when we send emails, whether that has been communications about ongoing activities for a brand or a business, like a magazine I was working for, or a literal editorial newsletter that was delivering content to them that they had subscribed to and said that they wanted to receive. So the first thing I want to start us with is an exercise that I always find really interesting, and I would love to welcome people to drop their thoughts in the chat, and we can talk about this out loud too, is to pick up your phone. No webinar host ever tells you to do this, right? Hey, look away from me for a second. Look at your phone and open your email, personal or business. Raise your hand on the, like the little Zoom hand raise. If there is something within 2 scrolls that you are not going to open. I'll raise mine. I have 4 things that I know I'm not going to open. Anyone else? Okay, I'm going to lower my hand so it's not obnoxious, but they're there, right? There are these emails there that you know you're not going to open. And the reason why is why? Anybody in the chat? I will tell you why, but I'd love to know. Okay, somebody says I have 50K. Emails that you're not going to open. This is not a surprise to anyone, right? There it is. J. Georgie is how I'm going to pronounce that name. I'm hoping I'm right. He says, or she, I don't know. The messaging does not relate to me. Let's repeat that. The messaging does not relate to me. So why, when we send emails, if we know that this is what is happening, why do we refuse to write something that we know will be valuable, will be something that is relatable, and will get opened? It's probably because we've just been assigned a task by someone superior to us that says we have to send out emails. We have to meet this sales objective, and the easy way to do it is to send out emails. Or we need to, it's what we've always done. Or the CEO likes to see that we're communicating with our audience, right? But if the email is not something that I'm going to relate to, I can ignore it and scroll right past and never open it. I can delete it without ever opening it, or I can open it and do a very, very easy thing these days, which is unsubscribe, right? So this is what you're battling with. And this is why people say email is dead. But I will counter argue that email is not dead. Bad ways of doing email is dead. So what you want to do is to send that email that people go, oh, I'm going to open that. Here's reasons people open emails. It has something critical in it that you need to know, right? It's to tell you your credit card's about to be charged. It's to tell you that your shipment is coming soon. It's to tell you that there's a problem with your order. Those kinds of emails, super high open rates, right? Because they're actually individualized and mean something to you, the recipient. Those, I work for a portfolio. So we have 8 brands that are SaaS tools, 2 that are service-oriented tools, right? Not tools, but service businesses. 3 of those are the SaaS tools are about or are sending specific emails, right? The 2 I'm going to talk to you about, and this is not for me to promote these products, but to tell you what we have found from the data when we look at these products, right? We send something through a brand called Get ARPU for merchants who sell subscriptions through Recharge on Shopify. And we have Curated.co, which is a newsletter sending platform. People, the ARPU email is an upcoming shipment notification email. It says, hey, you're about to be charged again for your next shipment of, I don't know, bone broth, right? Like you've got a monthly shipment of bone broth coming your way. It tells you that that's coming soon. It gives you a chance to add more. It gives you a chance to pause. It is about the recipient, right? They get opened at 60% and higher. We have some customers who average 70 to 80% open rates on these emails. And it's obvious why. It's not an email telling you to buy something. There is a way to buy something in that email, but it is an email notifying you of critical information that you need, right? Next thing you might be willing to open could be a newsletter from an individual or a brand, or an individual at a brand. And the reason you open those is not because they're telling you all about the new features and everything about them, but that they have established trust with you and have been generous in what they send, to the point where you know from the moment you subscribed to that or were somehow enrolled in their email newsletter list, that every time you open it, you get something from it that you can use either with its, when it's B2B, that's like in your role, in your work. If it's B2C, it might be something you could use in your life, right? So we were talking about that bone broth. You might also open emails from that brand who sells you the bone broth if they are sending you recipes or advice on how to use that in your life. Advice that tells you how to get the most out of the product is a lot more attractive for someone to open than advice on how to buy more from them. When you start out selling, you end up losing opens and you lose credibility and people stop opening your emails. So think very hard about the first emails you send when someone subscribes to your newsletter or to your brand's emails. How well and how generous can you be in those first several emails to have established a trust that means that when they see that that's coming from your brand, or when they see that that's coming from Ashley at your brand, that they know there's something good for them in that email, versus all of these other things that are flooding their inbox that do not relate to them. So that's why we're calling this win the inbox, because there's probably 10% of senders who are winning and everyone else is losing. Like the best you can hope for is they saw your brand's name, but they saw it in a negative way if they didn't open it and bypass it, because they saw it in a way that was like, ugh, I wish they wouldn't send me this, right? So when we talk about winning the inbox, we're really talking about winning trust. And whether you are sending newsletters or helping a brand decide on their email strategy or putting together one for your own brand, the thing you want to question with every single item in there that you're sending is, does it serve the person I'm sending it to, or does it serve me? Because we get traction in emails, we get engagement in emails when we put serving others at the top of the list of things we want to do with that email. So now I'm going to kind of talk through, and I want you all to feel free hey, let me know if someone asks a question, because I'm going to look at another screen at my notes. But do let me know if someone asks a question in the chat, because I hate giving slide presentations. It is one of my least favorite things to do because I like to encourage relationships and conversation. And that comes from having a little flexibility, right? So I've got my notes and I know what I want to talk through based on what we've told you we will be talking through. But I want to also encourage, interrupt me when you have a follow-up question to something I've said, or at least put that in the Q&A so we can get to it, because I'm here to answer questions. All right, so you've shared an email, or you've looked at your email and you've seen things that you're not going to open. What does get people to open emails? How do you establish that great relationship between brand and audience member or customer prospect? Or sometimes I like to think of it more as sender and recipient, because I work with people who are sending editorial newsletters. I work with people who are sending transactional newsletters. So or not even transactional newsletters, but specifically transactional emails. So one thing that I like to encourage people to do is take a content strategy approach with their email newsletters. And the reason I focus on newsletters is not just because I work for a brand that sells a newsletter tool. I have done a lot of research and talked with a lot of people who send amazing newsletters. And that has been the privilege of this job. And one thing that they all do in common that I would encourage you to do is that they have figured out how to be a resource for the recipient, right? They have figured out how to be in relationship with the recipient and how to make that recipient's life better. And they are taking something that is one-to-one, an email from me to you, and they are scaling it. So the little house that is your email, that's an intimate space. That's not a billboard that people are driving by on the highway. That is something that you have invited them to do. So beware how you treat that invitation, right? So one thing that I want to mention is that while, and I can't even remember what it is right now because I just don't send them as much, but while normal marketing newsletter open rates, depending on industry, might vary between like 10%, 25%. I think 25 would be like at the high end, right? Of like maybe a nonprofit or a church or something like that, or hobby related. The open rates that we see customers who are sending purely editorial newsletters, and those editorial newsletters may have one section of them that is promotional, but the rest of it is editorial. And when I say editorial, I mean content that serves and is articles, links to articles, information, tips, ways to be better at your job, resources you might like, that sort of content. Like, so the content marketing strategy that we all use on our blogs is applied within the newsletter. They see, at least on the curated platform, an average open rate of 40% and higher. So we're already starting to see a trend, right? Emails that really matter to you because they're about to charge you or they're giving you an update on an order you made, really high open rates. Editorial email newsletters, high open rates. You can balance those types of emails with emails that you perhaps need to send to promote a sale and use them to build a good relationship with the people you're sending to, so that you're not just sending sales email after sales email after sales email. You're sending informational email that helps them in their life or in what they're doing. And then you're sending a sales email, and they're more likely to open the sales email and tolerate the being on your list and not subscribe because you've balanced that with a willingness to serve. So does that make sense? I see we might have a question in the chat. Ooh, video messages are good. Informative, not selling messages. So you're mirroring what I'm talking about right here. So what really good newsletters do is the creators act like a media company. And when I say act like a media company, what I mean is some objectives for your newsletter could be to report on the industry you serve in real time, to become a part of your reader's life, to be a beat reporter. If you've never heard the phrase beat reporter, I'm telling you now as a journalism major, that is someone who is told, hey, you go to every city hall meeting this year and you report on it. Because this is how we're going to serve our readership is we're going to know the most about City Hall. Or, hey, you go to every club meeting that this group has this year, or you follow this particular niche, like women in tech, right? And you start following that niche and reporting on it in real time, whether it's your content or curated content, you are going to start learning more about what your ideal client profile cares about. And you are going to be serving them the way that a news outlet does. Media companies prioritize news that readers care about. HubSpot knows editorial newsletters are valuable. Why else did they buy the hustle? So what your goal will be is to become the best source of industry news for your ICP. You want to think through, what should you publish if you could really focus on the persona you serve that would make your brand's newsletter their go-to resource for that topic. Media companies also build trust with really credible content. So goals here would be to mix original and curated content that serves your reader, earn the right to be promotional. So you might be earning the right to be promotional by sending an editorial newsletter and a sales email on different cadences, or you might do it all in one newsletter where 90% of that content is editorial and 10% is brand. I do this with Opt-in Weekly. It is the email newsletter of Curated. So it is a newsletter about newsletters, because my audience is people thinking about publishing a newsletter. So everything in there is curated news about the newsletter industry, about what's working well for people growing their lists, about marketing, about publishing, because I have people publishing newspapers on my list, right? And then 10% is what's going on with my brand, which might not be come buy this product. Actually, it never is. It's me using that little spot that you could maybe see in a non-brand newsletter, it being sold to a sponsor, but I'm my own sponsor. So in that spot, I will share news about the way Curated can be used, whether that's something we know we want our customer to know exists within the software, or something that we have just released. But even that is shared in like a very story brand, how does this help you, serving sort of way. So you want to prompt yourself to ask every bit of content, how does this content serve my customer? So I would be remiss to talk about newsletters and not mention the queen of newsletters. If you're not subscribed to her newsletter, go do so right now. Ann Handley publishes Total Anarchy every 2 weeks, AKA fortnightly. And one thing that she says, and she puts out a lot of cool resources about newslettering, actually, but one thing that she has been known to say is that you need to put the letter in newsletters. So a quote from her is that she says, I write each issue like a letter to my friend, and I want them to be delighted by my letter. Think love letters instead of email blasts. Email allows us to build an audience who wants to hear from us, but things fall apart pretty quickly if we don't treat our audience with respect. So it's not like, it's such a tragedy to me to see someone build a list and then do bad things with it, right? You want to build a list that actually starts to grow itself, because the people on that list not only reply to you and say, wow, this is great, this is amazing, it changes my life, or it was just a great moment in my day, and I know I'm going to use this tactic you're talking about, but then they amplify it to other people. Now that is quality organic growth for a brand, right? Is to take a relationship and invest in it in a way where it begins to grow. It's almost like a subscriber ROI, if you will, right? So take it from Ann Hanley, who sends that total anarchy out fortnightly and is a major voice in the email newsletter space. She went from like 3,000 subscribers to 40,000 subscribers in 2 or 3 years. Big, right? Big newsletter. And it was all through organic growth, word of mouth, people sharing. She's the CEO, I believe, of Marketing Profs, if you're familiar with that company. And what I think stands out to me most about her perspective on newsletters is that it allows an individual or a company to build a long haul relationship. It's almost like pen paling, right? So you need to kind of be willing to have someone associated with that newsletter, and for that someone to be real and vulnerable versus buttoned up and corporate, right? So moving right along, you want to measure your content performance. So what I like to tell people to do is to treat your newsletter metrics like blog metrics and monitor performance. So you can go beyond like this individual link data to see which topics resonated and use that to guide both your newsletter content strategy and your overall content strategy. Because when it becomes a part of the ecosystem of content that you're creating, then you can start to look in the email newsletter metrics and see like people really loved this link, right? Or people really love this link category, because I've got a way I can go in and I can have like 5 categories of content in my newsletter, and I can see which categories get the most clicks, the most engagement. And I also use what people reply back and tell me to inform my content. But use that to influence what you post on social. Use social to influence what you put in your newsletter. Use both to influence what you put on your blog. You might find that it's not worth your time to devote budget to a blog post until you've curated 3 or 4 articles around that topic and seen them go off like gangbusters in your newsletter. And then you go, oh, hey, we should probably make an SEO play on this too and have our own blog about this topic. So curating other people's content and doing that in the legal way where you're giving them full credit for what they've published is a route that I think more companies should use as an MVP to test content ideas. All right, so we have someone saying that EQ storytelling writers are rare to find. Yes, so I think that plays right into maybe curated content. If you don't have the bandwidth on your team to have original content written, then maybe you start from an MVP place of curating content and having one person in-house writing an introduction that rounds up all of that curated content. And then you perhaps graduate or evolve to having someone on staff who's in charge of creating that content later on down the road. We currently have me writing the prologue, and then we have curated commentary throughout the rest. Ooh, excuse me, I'm gonna choke. Look at that dry throat feeling. Okay, so in all of that content, I'm going right back to service. Be customer centric. Excuse me. I might just clear my throat for a second. I'm going to mute myself so you don't have to hear. Sorry, I got a huge tickle. All right, so I want to screen share with you if I'm allowed to. I don't know if I have permission. Yes. Okay, give me just a sec. I'm going to open up a newsletter from Branch that is called Mobile Growth news. So what branch does is they have their branch website, and then they have mobile growth news, which is, or excuse me, they have this mobilegrowth.org, which is like a third party, but it's their company's content play. So it serves as a resource for their audience on all things mobile growth. Now, this is their, where is the link? Here it is. This is their newsletter. And so powered by Branch, but mobile growth news, right? So they're working as if this is a media company that then gets people into their brand, right? It comes out from this guy, Alex. Alex Bauer at Branch sends this newsletter, not the brand. And he gets personal about his thoughts about things. So, a couple of days ago, this happened. My hypothesis, like, he gives a nice intro, owns it. And then he has a curated list of links. And people, like, he has been doing this for over a year. And people consider him a top expert on the topics he has been curating about because he has been building that rapport, right? I wouldn't be here speaking with you today if I hadn't been curating content from newsletter creators and learning from them to then become someone who can speak what I hope is articulately, about newsletter creation. So when you think about serving people, serve them with a person, if possible, even if that's someone who is not actually doing the writing, but would be a good face for the brand or the company. Next thing, you want to discover and send more of what readers want. That is through that tracking engagement and using topic categories, but also test ideas by asking. If you got on this call early enough, you know that we were talking about Newsletter Fest and how quickly that grew. We'll be coming back again in April, I hope. And basically, we had Opt-in Weekly, our weekly newsletter about newsletters. And we suggested in one of the newsletters, like, hey, we're thinking about launching something called Newsletter Fest and having speakers for a few days on newsletter topics. A week later, we had so many quality speakers interested in this event and so many people chiming in saying what a great idea it was that we ended up extending it to a week. And we had like 500 signups for the separate newsletter that was just for the event. So I was sending like a countdown, like this is February. We're going to have this April 12th. Every week I'll send you a newsletter with just like 8 weeks to go, 7 weeks to go. Here's the new speaker who signed up. Here's this. We had 500 signups to that newsletter within like a week of announcing it. So look to what people are interested in and create it for them, right? And you can definitely use a newsletter to prompt and see and kind of have a two-way conversation with your audience. Lastly, I'm going to tell you to be generous. Curate third-party content that subscribers will find value. Share your own content if it provides value, and feature experts and influencers in your industry. So if you start to boost the profiles of those who are underappreciated, they will reciprocate and boost yours. And it kind of will build a brand awareness that is kind of an amplification process. So how do you launch a newsletter and turn your newsletter from like nice to read to need to read? So the steps to this are establishing a goal for your newsletter. And that goal should start to strengthen our relationship with our readers by, and then you need to finish that sentence. So establish a goal, strengthen your relationship with your readers by blank. That could be providing the best resources for this particular ICP who cares about whatever, right? Establish that goal, then before you start looking at tech and start looking at how you're going to format this newsletter, I want you to start researching what else exists, right? Who else is serving this audience in the way I think I want to serve them? And how can I do it differently? So that will help you refine your scope and define an unfair competitive advantage that you and your team can provide in this newsletter. So until you have a concept or strategy for the newsletter that you're really excited about, stay in that zone. You can start looking at tech and laying things out, et cetera, or going into your own system. But I would say that the best newsletters are those that like have kind of like what I think of as like a firecracker idea, to where like, it's going to be something that people really love receiving. And you're going to have a hunch about what you think you should do. My recommendation is build out around, maybe you have 2 or 3 hunches. Maybe you have the one hunch and you want to really try with it. I would test it to a segment first. Sometimes that segment for an individual is 20 people in their life that they trust the judgment of. Sometimes that might be 20 customers that will give you a real feel on whether this is going to thrive or not. But what I call that is like a soft launch. So it's your MVP, like here are the categories we're going to have, we're going to do this. And the best way to do this, whether you're launching it to an existing list or to a following that you have on social, is to sort of say you're going to do it and then bring them along for the journey. Because the more conversations you have with people about what they would find really valuable, about what they already read that you're going to have to compete with, the better you will be at getting something that really is need to have versus nice to have. And then you kind of test it with a soft launch, send a few issues and iterate based on feedback. And guess what? Your newsletter is always going to be changing. If you think that this is going to be something that you can set and forget, like go ahead and forget that, because even the best publications in the world change the topics, not the topics, but they change the way they deliver content over time, because they may have a trivia section that just kind of plays out after a year, and that's okay. So be okay with the unknown future of the publication that you are publishing, and also be okay with something in your email stack that you're sending that is not intended to have a conversion rate. The conversion rate on an email newsletter is, did you get them to open it? Did you get them to click on something? Did you get them to smile? Did you get them to respond? Those are the things you are measuring. It's not, and we did 50K in sales. Like that comes because of their relationship with your newsletter. So it seems like we might have a hand raised. I'm not sure. It's Sarah. Did she want to come on and ask?
Yeah, we can.
Or it could be left over. I don't know. Hello?
Hello? Yeah.
It was left over. Okay, so then I will finish out my list and you guys prop some questions in there because I'm still here and I'm still like really, I drink a lot of coffee. So
okay.
We're all good. So the last couple of recommendations as you launch that I have are to, after you've defined that unfair competitive advantage and you've established a cadence and how you're going to test it, is to then create a way for people to sign up. Decide how people are going to get opted in. Is it going to be because they chose to receive the newsletter and they know that they have you've set really clear expectations about what the newsletter is going to be? Or is it going to be because they downloaded an ebook, not my recommendation, and you auto-enrolled them in your marketing mix, and part of that is your email newsletter? I will say that email newsletters that get the highest open rates are the ones where people said, yes, I want to receive this newsletter, not yes, I want to download this thing, and now I'm on your list, right? And that makes total sense, right? It's just common sense that if you almost make it difficult, not hard, not too difficult, but if you make it, if the flow of getting on your list is an actual decision to be on the list, then you will have better engagement from those people. Those are the people you want on that newsletter list. So create really clear expectations, create a welcome email that super delivers. My recommendation is that if they sign up for something, especially, even if it's weekly, but especially if it's every 2 weeks or monthly, you want to have a welcome email that says like, hey, the next issue, like after thanking them, right? Like you thank them first, then you, after that, like you say, hey, the next issue might not be out for however long, but here are some resources that I hope you would like and be able to use right away. And then you prompt them with a question, like, you know, what are you hoping to get out of this? Or what is your biggest challenge with this? Like questions that will get them to reply, because that will improve your deliverability ratings with the email platforms themselves. But the reason I like to say, put those links in, put something in there that serves them right away, is that's you're establishing that generous relationship, right? Like until you get the issue, here are, and what I like to do is go in and find over the last year, what were the top 5 links, right? Like which things do people find most helpful over that amount of time, and then putting them in the welcome email. Like, here are the types of things you should expect to see in our newsletter. And guess what? If you're a brand or you're representing a brand, all 5 of those links better not be to your website, unless you are just a content creation monster and you have the best content possible for your ICP. I would recommend making it either all curated or a mix of curated and in-house content. So those are my steps to getting off the ground. The thing that you want to focus on beyond that is becoming habit forming. And the habit that you want to form is that when you send the email, they open it because they trust you and they know it's going to be good. All right. Questions?
Yeah, I can see like a question from Baska. I'm sorry if I butchered his name.
I'm just glad it was you and not me. How do you build a newsletter audience from scratch? All right, I'm answering live. It's difficult. It is very difficult. And this is why brands with the funding to do it are buying other newsletters, right? Like some brands are going out and buying a newsletter from an independent creator who was just serving a specific niche. And they were like, hey, great, there's an audience. But then their challenge there is maintaining the integrity of the relationship between the publisher and the recipient, right? Because they've kind of injected themselves, and are they going to change it? Are they going to keep it the same? What's going to happen with that? But what I recommend is that you are combining the power of organic social and paid social if you're wanting to promote this newsletter, but not in a way where you are, even with your individual account, publishing content that is just like, sign up for my newsletter, sign up for my newsletter, sign up for my newsletter. It's not going to work, right? The way that like a LinkedIn algorithm is going to help you is if you publish the newsletter, and don't just go put a link to that newsletter. Don't be lazy. That's what I call LinkedIn lazy, is a link and leaving, right? Like a link and like a sentence and boom, you're gone. And it's just like the algorithm hates it, and you're going to rot on LinkedIn doing that. What you do is you either bring in an excerpt of something that was written in there, or you write a new social version of the content that you're delivering in the newsletter. So say I curate a link about, let's talk about ARPU for a minute. Say I curate a link about the like top 5 pet peeves of e-commerce subscribers. Like when I can't cancel, when I have to like log in and I can't remember my password and I just want to adjust my subscription, like this list of things, right? And so I have curated that for my newsletter. But then I want to get some traction from social. I might put together a social post that focuses in on just one of those things. Like why making it hard to cancel is the devil. Like why you're doing the devil's work if you were making it difficult for people to cancel, and have like a really opinionated that aligns with my brand's opinion, right? Post about that topic. And then do not link to the newsletter in that post. Mention like, hey, I brought some information into my newsletter about this week. I would love your thoughts, blah, 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 you know, like the things that you do on LinkedIn to get engagement. And then you put a little parentheses that says link in comment. And then the first comment of your LinkedIn post would be to that particular issue of your newsletter. Or if you can do, like I tend to link to that specific section within my newsletter, like an anchor link to that topic and what I wrote in my commentary. And that gets people engaging on LinkedIn, but also seeing like, hey, I could get more of this here without you shouting, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe. It's more of a natural organic progression for them to go like, hey, I really like that she addresses this topic and this topic. And now I'm going to go subscribe to the newsletter. And there may be some people who only want to consume your content through social, and that's okay. It's a different relationship though, when someone subscribes to your newsletter, what it is communicating is, I like what you create so much that I don't want to miss it. I don't want there to be any chance that an algorithm forgets to show me this or doesn't realize how much I love this. Like, what if I want to take a month off of LinkedIn? Am I going to miss your content? No, because you subscribed to the newsletter. It's a deeper form sometimes of that relationship. And it's a different way that relationship exists. Because commenting on something publicly on LinkedIn is far different than someone responding directly to your email newsletter and saying like, hey, I'm about to try this in my day-to-day, and I really appreciate that you sent it to me. And oh, by the way, I have a dog named Chewy too. Right? Mm-hmm. That's a more vulnerable relationship and journey that you're going on together. More questions?
Yeah, we have another one from Jay.
Okay, so building from scratch, I will say that you might want to try to guest post for sites that have content along the same lines as yours, and then just do that in exchange for making sure that they credit you in your newsletter sign up page or something along those lines. That's a really good organic growth mechanism. Beyond that, you can run paid social ads to get people to sign up, but those people are not going to be as engaged. If it's just a native sign up form, like through Facebook, like newsletter about marketing, sign up here, they don't even have to leave Facebook. Those are going to be less engaged subscribers. Okay, speaking of social, what is your recommendation for a B2B? There are so many platforms, not sure what to focus on. Depending on the B2B, this could be the wrong or right answer, but if you're talking organic social, I think LinkedIn right now is having a moment because organic reach is really good. I think also the places I would look into with social, and you have to be really like aware of the rules of Facebook groups. But if you can find Facebook groups for your ICP, I would start by joining and lurking. And then I would give good advice in comments. And then I would test out posts that are non-promotional editorial type posts that do something similar to what I was talking about with LinkedIn in terms of providing a path to your newsletter, but not making the post about your newsletter. but more about the topic you want to discuss with the people in the group who have chosen to be in that group. And you need to make very, very sure in the admin's rules that that is allowed. Some brands can execute this well on Reddit or individually in different Reddit subgroups. So those would be my top tries. I haven't TikToked anything yet, but I have a feeling as my team expands that would be a direction I would want to go in, just because the explosive growth that I've seen people have there. So B2B, I still think you can find your place. You just have to find the people. Facebook is so saturated. You need to find the little groups that they're hanging out in. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Any more questions?
I have one more. Do you think like the formatting matters?
Formatting.
Yeah.
I've been thinking, okay, one place I think formatting matters is the fact that, like, I don't know, 60% or over of people are looking at your newsletter on mobile. So I really hate anything that forces me to look at 2 columns on my phone. Like, it's just not going to impress me much. So I think you need to be formatting with mobile in mind, thinking, how does this look on the phone? Beyond that, I think as long as it's clean and doesn't look antiquated, that you're in a good place. Sometimes, especially lately, with the distrust of media and the distrust of brands, it's almost safer to go less designed, less polished, more the same way that typing something without punctuation makes me real. Sending an email that is not overly designed makes a brand seem less like buttoned up, right? Yeah. So you might want to test that and see if one format versus another gets engagement. I would say that, like, the places where you need to be careful are checking, what does this look like in a couple of different email platforms, especially Gmail, because you don't want to get clipped above the unsubscribe and have people start marking you as spam, and because they can't figure out how to unsubscribe.
Mm-hmm.
And then one thing that you prompted me to think about is that I don't think formatting is nearly as important as content, right? Like, are you delivering? Because people will read some stuff in really bad format if it's good stuff to read, right? Beyond that, I think that subject lines should not make or break whether an email gets opened. It's you in that first email establishing rapport that gets that second email open, that gets the third email open, that gets the fourth email open. You can have a really bad subject line and good content. And if you've been delivering consistently good content, it's not the subject line that's winning the inbox there. And I kind of have been thinking a lot about length, because I get some email newsletters that are really good at going long. Like, they have lots and lots of curated content in there. And I feel like I'm scrolling social media as I look at it, because there are so many different categories and content, and I know which categories to expect. And those are really good. But I think there's also, especially if you were like, do we have the bandwidth to launch this? Should we do it? How can we get this done as a team on top of what we're already doing? Like, if it's not your main focus, it's really hard to dedicate a team's worth of, I don't know, between 8 and 10 hours a week to a newsletter. I would say start testing with 1 to 3 pieces of content in a newsletter. I've seen some people do really well with daily newsletters that have one tiny piece of content in them. Like, we're talking 3 sentences, but 3 powerful sentences, sending you to a curated link or something like that. So you really have to think about your recipient and what their attention bandwidth is going to be, and then what you are skilled at and can offer really uniquely and make a make highly competitive, like really unfair advantage, and find the intersection of those things. So if my audience is really busy and probably doesn't have a lot of time to read, but they will read if I send reports around the things that impact their business, like maybe I should be sending them once a week a list of 5 links to reports, or my analysis of one report and what it really means to their business, kind of thing. So you want to play around with, I think looking back now, I probably should have launched shorter with opt-in weekly and let it grow, because if you launch really long, then that's a commitment to keep up every week, right? And I don't regret it, but I kind of like, now that I've coached more people through launching newsletters, I would say, like, if you are not sure, sprinkle. And then if it's going well, let it pour, right? But like you get a lot of feedback off of just like a 2 to 3 content piece newsletter.
That's a good answer. I think we have another question from Sarah. Yeah.
You don't recommend automatically adding ebook downloaders to the newsletter. So can you talk about the best ways to get people to opt into a specific newsletter based on the initial action, which is to download an ebook? For example, Facebook lead ad to download. Now you want them to be invested in receiving content, consistent content. What are your best practice tips? Okay. So I've talked with Russ Henneberry a lot about this, and he does a lot of magnets, right? And he has a share magnet, he has a lead magnet, etc. And his flow is one that I don't necessarily agree with. And he admits that the people who are subscribed because they wanted the lead magnet, like the marketing tech tools master list or whatever, that they are less engaged than the people who said, I want to subscribe to the click, right? So my recommendation is that if you do use a content magnet to get people on a list, that you then send them a sampling, send them the option, right? What my best practice, and I hate the term best practice, so it's funny that I'm using it. I think the best practice with the ebook download would be that first of all, I don't like gating ebooks. I think those are bad leads. Like, we can have a whole argument about this, but I think that most ebook downloads are low intent leads that you would do better not to email. Right? Because they might have gotten the ebook, but they don't really want to hear from you. I think give them the option to say they want to hear from you. Give them the option in the thank you page to opt into the newsletter. So the way with my SaaS company, let's see, for Pulse and for Curated, we actually have like free trials with those SaaS tools. And what I have in the free trial sign-up process is an option. It's unchecked, but it's an option to opt in weekly. And there's a description that says this is a newsletter for newsletter creators. And there is a link where they can open it and go check it out before they say, yeah, I want to subscribe to that. So we use the API to get them into that list. And it's part of their decision as they're looking at the tool. Do they want to hear more about newsletters and creating them and engage with us in that way? So I think that the more options you give, just making sure that there's a way to navigate to your newsletter from your website, hopefully in the hero and not buried in the footer, or not like an exit pop-up, right? I would align it more with like a really strong blog post that has a CTA either mid-post or at the bottom, that is a conscious decision that they make because they found that content so good that they wanted to sign up. Additionally, it may be less of a like quality UX experience for them, but you could put in that ebook, at the end of that ebook, like on the last page, a call out for your newsletter with a way for them to go subscribe from there. And the reason I'm saying like put it after they've consumed some content is because then them asking to be on that email list is them saying, yeah, I liked that, I want more, instead of, oh, thanks for sending me this thing I didn't ask for. Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that was the last question we had. Thank you for taking your time to do this.
Of course, it was a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Like, where can people find you?
Okay, I'm on LinkedIn as Ashley Gattuso. I am, you can go subscribe to my newsletter about newsletters and tell other newsletter creators about it. It's optinweekly.com. And that name was very intentional, right? And additionally, if you have any kind of e-commerce subscription business, go watch us over at Subscription E-commerce Live. That is on YouTube. So I have 2 YouTube series. One is for newsletter creators and one is for subscription e-commerce sellers. And there's quite the intersection there of those people as well. So if you just go check out my LinkedIn page, you can probably see a post about one of those things come up in your feed soon, or go stalk it and find something. But those are kind of the 2 projects that I'm most excited about lately, or that I'm pouring a majority of my energy into.
Nice. Yep, I think that's it. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Yeah. So I'll resend this recorded replay to some people who have registered and some who didn't manage to join us today. So
yeah. And if you watch the replay and you have a question, don't hesitate to ask to send it to ashley@curated.co. That's going to be the best email address for me to answer newsletter related questions.
Okay. Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you.
Okay.
Pleasure. Bye-bye.
Bye.